Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. Today we're going to do another page in our watercolor journals and we're going to go back to some subscriber comments and we are going to do some birds. So today we're going to do a bluebird. Bluebirds are super interesting, fun and colorful, and very cute little birds. A lot of people mix them up with blue jays, which are much bigger and a lot meaner in my experience in the backyard when going for the bird feeders. So we're looking at bluebirds. So small, cute, blue and orange coloring. And that's what we're going to do today. So for those of you who are new, supplies and materials. I'm working in a 6x9 watercolor sketchbook. It is 100% cotton paper, 140-pound cold press. You can find links in the description to all the supplies and materials that I use. I have Core QOR by Golden, are the watercolor paints that I use. That's my preferred brand, but any brand that you have will work just fine. I use a lot of very typical colors that you can find in most brands. Every once in a while I throw in a crazy one, but I'm also using 3 round brushes here today. I have a size 12, a size 6, and a size 3. That's a nice variety. You don't need a brush in every single size. The increments are so tiny between them. So big jumps is better, just a couple of really good brushes. These are all Princeton Select, Velvet Touch, and Aqua Elite, just from my collection of brushes. I have more than I need, but that's what happens over time. And then I also have a pencil and a kneaded eraser. This is a drawing pencil. It's a 5H, so it's a little bit harder, so the lines come out much lighter when I draw, so I don't have to do as much erasing. And then a kneaded eraser, which is great to have on hand, especially when you're working on watercolor paper. It's much better than a traditional eraser. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to have to do some drawing today. I know y'all love when we get to draw. So we're going to draw out our bird. Birds are a bunch of really simple shapes kind of all put together. And a lot of people are very intimidated by the drawing, but if you can break it down, if you're looking at a picture, 1, you can certainly trace, and that is not cheating. Go ahead and trace a picture of a bird and then paint it. 2, if you go take a picture of a bird and you just start to outline the basic shapes. So a bird usually is 1 big oval for the body, usually kind of tilted on an axis to the side. I should draw a little darker so you guys can see it. So 1 big oval tilted to the side, and then usually there's another oval overlapping, sitting right on top like that. And then we can erase the lines in the middle where they overlap. You're just going to start to connect to those sections. So it's going to have a little bit of an indent here for the neck. Usually the back is kind of flat or straight. Sometimes there's a little indent. And then usually it has a shoulder for a wing. You know, it looks like a big blob right now, but just a rounded wing for a shoulder. And it'll depend on the bird. And the wing is usually tucked back along the body somewhere like this. And then it also will have a tail feather, which is usually just a very skinny triangle, or like a long, skinny kind of triangle trapezoid. So wider at the bottom, narrower at the top. And that's your basic shape of your bird. Your wing can come off the edge a little bit here. And now putting in the beak and the eye is really where it brings it all together. So for a blue bird, they have a pretty small beak. The forehead comes down to about here. And then the beak is a little bit rounded. not too long and pointed. And then the eye will come kind of straight back up a little bit. So at a slight angle, I'm just drawing a line to kind of give myself a starting point. I recommend starting bigger rather than smaller with the eyes, and giving it kind of an inner circle, and definitely leaving room for a highlight inside it. And then the last thing we have to do is kind of include some feet. So for this bird, since it's in full profile here, we're probably going to have a leg come out this way. So not really feet, talons. And then there'll be another one coming out from the other side. And you don't have to get super detailed with these, especially right away. And then we can erase a lot of the interior lines. I'm gonna flatten out this back a little bit and make it a little thinner there. So just taking off this little hump. He looked a little hunchbacked. There we go. And then if you want, or if you need, the coloring on a bluebird, there's like blue up by the head here, and then just under the chin, this is orange usually, around the belly, and it tapers off into white. The shoulder or the wing will be blue. I keep calling it the shoulder, but it's their wing. So you can just kind of mark out lightly where the colors are going to be. And let's give this guy a little branch underneath him. And you know what, we'll put some flowers on the branch. Make it a little flowering. We'll paint that in later. There'll be some flowers, just marking out for composition wise on either side. Okay, so I think we have our bluebird, at least the base of the bluebird. I'm going to do some lightening up. So I'm just taking my kneaded eraser and going all over the surface. And we're not going to paint this in high detail. We're going to give this a little, just changing the shape of the beak a little bit. And you can too. So one of the things I recommend if you're new to drawing and you're really nervous, do all of this sketching on another piece of paper, sketch things out, erase, kind of figure it out. And then take that sketch, you can outline it in marker and then trace it using a light box or a window. Or I've shown other tracing methods where you color the whole back of your piece of paper that you're going to trace and place it on your paper. We can get into all of that, but that would be one of my recommendations as well. All right, so let's get to painting. All right, so for colors, oh, and just FYI off camera, I swapped out my size 12 for a size 10 in my Prints and Select. This one's just a little more manageable on the smaller size. All right, so we're going to use Ultramarine blue. This is like the perfect blue for a bluebird. Nice warm blue. All right, and we're also, the bluebird is orange, but I'm going to stick with primary colors and make my own orange. I have like 2 or 3 oranges in here, but we're going to make our own. Because I like to torture you all with color mixing. So I'm using Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm also going to use my Cadmium Yellow medium. So we have primary colors here. So let's take a little magenta and mix it into my orange. Now the great thing is blue and orange are opposite each other on the color wheel. So if at any point your orange is feeling too orange, too bright, it needs to be more subtle or more brown in tone, all you have to do is take a tiny bit of blue and add it to it, and it'll start to tone it down to make it more of a brown, a subtle orange, which you can definitely get on the Bluebird, kind of in layers. It's more organic, more natural, not super, super vibrant in every instance. We're going to orange ours up a little bit more. Oh, that's very bright. We're making far more orange than we need. But there we go. We have a nice bright orange to start with. And again, we can always add water to make it lighter, and also add blue to make it tone down the saturation, make it more brown, more earth toned. All right, let's start with our blues. And also we're going to have white gray under the belly, and we're going to make that simply by, I'm going to make that in this middle, well, making a purple. So blue and magenta, make a very light purple, add a tiny bit of yellow, and that grays it out. We have a nice, lovely gray. And if it's still too purple, just add a little bit more yellow until you get to a more neutral gray. And you can always go back and forth, add a little more blue, a little more magenta till you really land where you want to land. But that's all you need is your 3 primary colors to pretty much make everything. Okay, so we have our color palette set. We'll get into the flowers and the branch and all of that. We'll probably put some pinks in there. So let's start with, I'm actually going to start with the belly. Usually I start with the boldest colors, but let's start with the belly area. So underneath our Bluebird, I keep wanting to say blue jay, is going to be in shadow. So we're going to put a subtle wash. I'm going to add a little more blue to this, kind of giving it the reflection of the colors that are going to be on top. It's a little too warm for me. Now it is supposed to translate as white, and I think it will once we get our other colors on there, but it is definitely not bright white. It is in shadow, it's underneath the bird, so it's important to recognize that, to not let your head overrule what is there in reality, or what would be there in reality. Now it doesn't mean I'm not going to leave a few little white highlight spots right at the top here. I'll let them be bright white. I'm going to add a little. All right, so that is the shadow underneath, under the belly. Let's move to the head. We're going to start with our blue. I'm going to start with a light wash of blue, and we're going to build this up in some layers. So I'm going to go around the eye because there are some white spots in the eye that I want to preserve. And I'm using my bigger brush right now. I'm probably going to switch to a smaller one very soon after I get these base layers in. So the head, you know what, let's do a light wash on the wing as well. I'm going to bring the head around a little bit, kind of drop down a little there. Wing, and then part of the tail is going to be really blue as well. And these are going to be a lot darker and a lot more vibrant soon and we put other layers on. But we want to have blue color, but light blue color for some of the highlights. So this part of the face is going to go much darker, but we're going to leave some highlight around the top. You'll see. All right, so same thing with our orange. Let's go really light. And you could do this all in one quick, super intense layer, where you're doing a really loose, kind of quick and expressive piece with lots of rich colors. That is certainly one way you can do watercolor. That's why I love it, because you can really tackle this in a lot of different ways and get a lot of different outcomes. So I'm just dropping in some more intense color and letting it bleed in wet on wet. All right, I'm gonna let that all dry. While we let that dry, let's put in a base for our branch and our flowers. So we need, I want brown for the branch. And you're thinking, I don't have brown here. Well, I do. I have orange. And orange is very close to brown. We're going to go a little bit more yellow. And again, I'm going to add, I'm going to have to make orange again, but I'm going to add this blue to it. And we're going to get brown. I'm just adding more paint so that I can get a darker brown color. If you go too far, you will get gray. So you got to pull it back with the yellow and the magenta. So brown is just a muted or a desaturated version kind of orange. And then once you get to the brown that you like, we're going to put a layer of that. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit because we're going to go in with darker. I am going to introduce Payne's gray in a little bit for the eye and some of the details. So you can also introduce a little bit of that to your brown as well if you want to go even darker than what you can get with your primaries. All right. Oh, but we're going to go a little lighter. I'm just going to put in same concept. I'm starting lighter because I'm going to build up shadows in darker areas. But everything is going to be some kind of shade of brown. Creating a few secondary branches. And then I can even come in with that Payne's gray and darker brown, just run it along the bottom. And there we go. Okay, so this is getting pretty close to dry. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush now. This is my size 3, so the tiniest brush. And I'm going to come back into this blue. And we're going to start back up at the head. Trying to put my hand in the wet paint. And I'm going to start to go around the eye area. and the beak. And I kind of want the most intense part to be around this eye. The intense blue part, it's the most in shadow. And then we're going to blend it out. And we're going to let it dry again. I'm going to put the eye in after this round, just so I have something to work around. Let's do the feather, the wing. So I'm going to come down, but I'm going to leave a few white spots as highlights. Create a little texture. I'm definitely going to put a shadow under the wing. And another layer. So right now we're working on the intensity of the blue, the brightness, and we'll put in some more details. In another layer. But again, leaving some of those highlights. I'm pulling even straight from the palette, not even mixing out here. Straight from my block of color. Okay, letting that dry. We're going to do the same thing again. I'm going to intensify some of the color on the orange. I'm actually going to go back in. You can see my white area on the underbelly needs a little more contrast. I'm going to put some darker gray right at the bottom here. And don't worry, we'll get to those legs. All right, let that dry. Put a little shadow here, almost like a ridge around the eye. But it's still damp, so still wet on wet. All right, we're gonna let all of that dry. And then we'll put in the nose, or the beak and the eye, and that will really start to bring it together. Let's do some flowers, some simple flowers while that's drying, so we don't have to take a break. I'm just going to take magenta here, add lots of water to it. So here's a little trick for you. Like, my palette color is a little too intense for me. I don't want to add a lot more water to it. Take your brush, fill it with water, then pick up some color, and now you have already mixed more water and more color in there. So let's just make some puffy, be almost like cherry blossoms. Some puffy little flowers. We'll add some yellow centers maybe to them. We'll add a couple, another layer. will be cherry blossom season, or it already is. I don't know. We just had frost here. We had snow. It is April. So I'm glad I'm a lazy gardener, because I have not done much of anything. And if I had, like, put in any flowers in my flower boxes, they would have been snowed on. All right, and then I'm just going to take my other little brush. That was my size 6. I'm going to take my size 3. I'm just going to add some little yellow pops in the center. And I guess we could add some green. You don't have to. I'm just going to take a little sap green. And we're just going to add a few little pops of green. They're not the star of the show. And then by the time we're done with this, hopefully our bluebird face will be dry, so we can add in beak and eye and some more detail in the orange. Okay, let's start with beak, a little black beak. So I have Payne's Gray here. And again, you can do this in layers to create some variation. Paint the whole thing in. The bottom part of the beak is going to be a little darker. It's underneath, it's a little in shadow, but I'm going to do that in layer 2. So just going to paint the whole thing in there. Now the eyeball. You want to preserve the highlight. If you have to go back in with like acrylic and bleed proof white, you can. I'm just going to trace right around where the highlight is going to be. Oh, my bluebird looks sad. I'll go back in with another layer, darker, in just a moment after that dries. Okay, so while that is drying, let's go back to some orange. Yellow and magenta here. Oh, this is a nice little brown orange. I'm going to stick right with that. All right, we're going to go a little darker orange here. I'm going to take those and I'm going to blend them out. You could do wet on wet again if you wanted to just make the whole area wet and drop in orange. I wanted a little more control. But now I'm doing wet on wet. I'm going to take my littler brush and I'm actually going to take, kind of overlap this white area a little bit with some little strokes. Bring out the feather. All right, let that dry. And let's bounce back to our branch. Some of this brown. Now I'm kind of just putting in some details and some texture, shadows. Oh, my flowers are still wet. Oh, and we have to do the legs. So we're going to stick with this brown, but I'm going to add Payne's gray. We're going to go a little darker, a little more muted. And we're not going to get too caught up in the details of the legs. Like stick this way, curve around, talon, another talon goes out the back. There we go. I think we're dry in there again. We're going to come back with another layer. I also love Payne's gray because there is a large range of saturation. As it dries, it gets lighter, and the more you layer it, the darker and more intense it gets. So I just darken the underside of the beak and put a little shadow towards the top. I'll take a little more blue, like right here. Go around the eye. And this has Payne's gray in it. Blend that out. This is where you can start to leave some feathery texture. Just go with the blue and some Payne's gray. And we can go back in here and leave some shadows, some texture. Same thing in the tail. And there we go. We have our little bluebird. Sitting on a branch with some lovely little flowers. You could certainly do a whole background around this, but I'm going to leave it as it is. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let's put on, let's see, can write with our pen on here. Can label our bluebird. Let's see. Again, trying not to run my hand through the wet paint. So bluebird and then colors. We did, you don't have to label yours if you feel like it's going to mess up your sketchbook. I did magenta. I did ultramarine. We also did cadmium yellow. And this was medium. And I did pull in some Payne's gray and sap green. So those are our colors. If you want to swatch them out so you remember them for the future, you can. It's always kind of fun to build a little instructional page in your book. Oh, I'm going to get all the blue out of there before I pick up the yellow. Sap green. And Payne's gray. So there's our little color palette with our list of colors. And that's our little bluebird. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out the description for links to supplies and materials. And I will see you for our next watercolor journal page very soon. Go ahead and share this with a friend or save it for later if you don't have time to get to it right now. And thanks again. As always, it's a pleasure. Happy painting, and I'll see you again soon.